Okay, great. The stream has been transferred over. This is the agenda. Should be pretty short and sweet. Love to get some client updates and then have a conversation about where we stand on engineering on Altair, and also give you a quick update on some of the stuff going on in the spec right now as we move towards like a final release of that, but definitely waiting on thumbs up on engineering side before we do this. So let's begin with client updates, and we can start with Tekku.
Okay, that's me. So Altair work is going well. I expect we'll be done with it by the end of our current sprint, which is in 2 weeks. Specifically on Altair, reference and fork choice tests are all passing. Gossip changes are all done. We're currently working on the validator API and duties, and for this we're following the API format proposed by Jim McDonald, and that's working out pretty well. We've got logic to pass the Altair fork info from the configuration file and construct fork and fork schedule objects that transition at the specified slot. And we are almost done with blocks by range and blocks by route RPC methods for Altair. So that's the main thing we've been working on, but there is other news. We will be migrating our default database from RocksDB to LevelDB over the next couple of releases. We've been running LevelDB in some of our test infrastructure for a couple of months, and it seems altogether more pleasant than Rocks. In particular, memory consumption is much improved, and we're going to make this as transparent as possible for Tekku users, of course. We have a release coming tomorrow with a few features worth noting. First is a nice community contribution for specifying multiple Eth1 endpoints and automatic failover between them. Second, Infura is now providing beacon chain state snapshots via their API. So on a fresh Tekku install, you'll be able to point directly to Infura's API endpoint and be fully synced and running in under a minute. We've had snapshot sync for a while now, if you have another running node to point it at or a recent state file around, but being able to start up directly from Infura is super convenient. And finally, we are now storing orphaned blocks in archive mode and providing an API to retrieve them, which was a feature request from some of our users. That's all I got.
Got it. Thank you. Nimbus. Mami Zahiri, either, or Yasik Zahiri. Mami usually does it, but he's not here.
Well, I guess I should take that. I was expecting Mami to be here, but he's off this week, so I guess this is a bit of a misunderstanding. But anyway, I'll make a brief update. We've released 2 releases very recently, 1.2 and 1.21. They represent a very impactful improvement in the performance of Nimbus. With the introduction of batched verification of incoming gossip attestations, we've achieved roughly between 30 and 50% total reduction of CPU usage of the client. And now, right now, for example, we can process all the attestations on the Prater network, on the nodes that are running 2,500 validators without maxing out the CPU. Other updates, just give me a moment. Another major new feature is that we finally have an implementation of the official REST API, which is currently in beta. And we've, just like Tekku, we have implemented a failover Web3 providers. And we've another notable improvement is that we have a new attestation packing logic, a new algorithm that works in a more lazy fashion. It computes the set of attestations that will be included in the block in the last possible moment. And this has led to significant improvements in the rewards that we are seeing in the blocks. And I guess that's the major improvements from this week.
Got it. And how is Altair development going?
On the Altair development front, we are making progress. We are still keeping everything in a branch. Actually, the focus has shifted a little bit towards the realism testnets. And we are, at this point, ready to participate in the first testnet, I believe.
Got it. Thank you. And Lodestar.
Hey. So as far as Altair goes, we have implemented the fork choice tests and the spec tests, and they're both passing. Consensus tests are passing on like a naive implementation of a state transition, so it's not fully ready, but it's at least a first step. We're still working on updating the networking stuff for Altair and the validator interaction. We just got a new release, 0.20. It is kind of a minor release, just some stability updates. But what we're going to be working on in the coming weeks is we're working on the hackathon. We're working on the light client during the scaling Ethereum hackathon. So we thought about participating in Ryanism, but we thought might be a bit more prudent for us to kind of go our own way and push forward on light clients during the hackathon.
Nice. Very cool. And Prysm.
Hey guys, that's me. So on the Altair front, we finished implementing all the state transition functions that ended up took us a while. We're working on networking and validated stuff right now. So the good news is that the spec test is already passing for all the state transition related operations. So we're very excited about that. On top of that, we have a new slasher implementation that Raul has been working on. So that is planned to go in a release either next week or next week. Highly encourage people to try that out. It is a lot more performant. And on the merge front, with the Renism, we were able to interrupt with the catalyst. So we have the interrupt chain that is able to advance. Unfortunately, there's one issue to work on, which our hash tree route for nested list is not correct right now. So we're working on that today, tomorrow. And last but not least, we have a new hire, Casey. So welcome, Casey, and I'm sure you guys will meet him soon. So yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. And Lighthouse.
Hey everyone. So we've also been working on Altair, as you can imagine. We've been passing the EF test for quite a while now, and we're planning on merging the consensus changes to our unstable branch very soon. It's massive PR, just needs a thorough review. We've had a lot of refactoring to do to handle the forks in general, especially around those tests. So we put a lot of effort there. The remaining features from the consensus side of things are the sync committee aggregation and the validator client updates. On the networking front, the RPC and gossip changes have all been implemented. They're ready for review, and we started the work on the discovery. So there's two issues that we opened on the specs repo that we would be very grateful if people could take a look at. It's issue 2314 and issue 2347. I'll link them just after this. So the first one is related to the participation rewards for the epoch prior to the actual Altair upgrade. And the second one is pretty much an open question on whether we should be adding the syncnet field to the metadata, the networking side of things. We will be participating in Rayonism, the merge hackathon. So we're building a merge chain with Catalyst and have submitted Box2Proto's mergenet tutorial repo. We're planning a big release in the coming weeks with the doppelganger support and significant memory usage improvements. We've also actually had a release, V1.3.0, about 9-10 days ago, also known as Pencil Vesta. It brings additional validation conditions that are applied to the aggregated attestations that essentially prevent incorrect attestations from filling up the ops pool. And we've also added improvements to our block packing, which essentially results in better block rewards for our stakers. We are also starting the development of our user interface in May. And that's about it for Lighthouse, really.
Great, thank you. Yeah, 2314, Michael originally from Lighthouse originally opened that. I left a comment 7 days ago, and there's a few options on how we should proceed. I do agree that doing nothing is probably not a good call, but I also think that doing a map of like previous epoch attestations to flags like increases the during that fork transition, increases like the amount of testing and consensus complexity and things that go wrong on the transition by quite a bit. So I prefer to do something simpler, but please do take a look at 2314. And I'll take a look at 2347 today. There's been a little conversation about that in another thread. On that front, Altair, thanks for the general updates. It sounds like we are getting there, but it also sounds like there's at least a couple of weeks of good work to do before we're working on some transient testnets. Is that where we're at?
Yep, that sounds good.
Okay, so that puts us 2 weeks from now, puts us a week into May. The original kind of like end of June target then becomes 6-7 weeks away, which I think, given that this is first hard fork that we'll be doing plenty of like testnet testing and have a lot of other moving parts with Rayonism and things going on, that is not a likely target, right? End of June, last week of June. Seems early at this point.
I think so.
Especially with Rayonism also happening.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of homework right now. Okay, so London is slated for end of July, although it doesn't have a date. It could go as into maybe mid-August, but they have the difficulty bomb that is creeping up, so that will happen in that time frame. It looks like we will be. I think the target would be in a similar time frame, and so let's keep an eye on when that date gets set, and we can think about dates then. I don't think it's prudent for us to go much farther than that, just because if Rayonism goes well, it'd be a good point for kind of the unified development and merge. But this is also our first hard fork, so I think that it is very important that we do it right rather than do it fast. A quick comment on your comment, Yasik. I think that we have to do a fork before we do the merge, because there's too much at stake to try this out for the first time. Then I know you're joking, but okay. So continue conversation over the next couple of weeks. We'll hopefully have some like pretty strong progress in engineering, and can begin to talk about what testnets look like 2 weeks from now. Sound good? Any other comments on this? Let us know in like a shared channel when anyone has a feature complete version of Altair that can spin up nets, and we can begin playing with that over the next couple weeks. Okay. On the Altair spec front, we have these 2 open issues that Betty pointed to. Love some input there. There's also been some refinement of spec tests, some additional tests that were added to cover a couple of corner cases, and a fixed test. I think in the sanity test, historical batch roots, the sync committees were being calculated incorrectly because they weren't using BLS properly. So that is coming, and we're also going to be adding a couple of like actual sync transition tests that have blocks before and after the fork as more of an integration test. So we're looking on doing another pre-release probably early this coming week, and so there'll be new test vectors coming out, but no features have been changed. It's been primarily refinements in language and fixing up and adding tests. I will definitely be knocking on doors on these couple of issues so that we can get some feedback in and keep it moving. Any other things on Altair that people want to discuss today?
I had a question for Ben, really, regarding the snapshots and the sync within Fura. I'm curious, when somebody starts up their client and syncs that way, it doesn't get any blocks, right? So what happens next when somebody wants to sync with Tekku?
We can possibly discuss offline, but it's just like starting from Genesis again. I mean, it's basically you download your SSE, which is the state. It's about 90 megabytes, and you need to peer and start taking blocks out. Oh, I see what your question is. The backfill of blocks. Yeah, we do. We do that I don't think we're currently backfilling blocks, but I need to check on that. Yeah. Are you thinking about peers scoring each other down for not having the block history or not being able to serve the history?
Yeah, both scoring and, you know, once nobody serves blocks, then we don't have them anymore.
Yeah, we're not currently planning to implement that. We don't see that as a huge risk. I mean, it would only be an issue if people are simultaneously, everybody on the network, you know, drops all the whole history. So and you pretty quickly get beyond the weak subjectivity period. I mean, it's not, so we are not currently, I think, very concerned about it, but definitely willing to to discuss.
Not concerned about backfilling to Genesis, or not concerned about starting before you backfill to Genesis?
So we are happy to start with a blank slate and just move forward from there. And if we are asked to serve blocks before that, I think we just say we don't have the blocks currently.
Gotcha. Okay, we need to uncover the old PR. I think that the network should probably have some promises, at least backfilling through, you know, a max reach subjectivity period. But if that PR is not merged, then we don't have anything to stand on that.
Yeah, I think we might be backfilling to whatever we think the current weak subjectivity period is. I need to check that. We're definitely not going back to Genesis.
I believe that y'all are working off of that PR, and that PR has like a max weak subjectivity period, which is like it's either 4 months or 8 months, based off of like max validator set sizes, and so that, you know, even in the worst case, you're filling it out, but you're not having to promise to get blocks from Genesis. Let me open that up. I know that there's two questions there. One is how far you backfill, and what the promise of the network is, and two is kind of the order of operations. Can you start validating before you backfill, and how you would peer score around that, and who can lie, and under what conditions. So let's take the conversation there.
I mean, the final question there is that older versions of all softwares, I think, generally start from Genesis and sync from there right now, regardless of weak subjectivity, right? So those, if
right, but Altair,
I guess if a majority of
Altair is a good place to, because everyone has to upgrade at a hard fork, and so changing that, like, you're going to fall off anyway, and so you can't use those old versions of software anyway. So those potential coordination points are good places to investigate that.
Yeah, of course. It's more for like now, if a lot of people start, I mean, the network can sustain it to a certain degree, but then if a lot of people start using too much things now, then we'll have issues for people running all the versions for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that in theory, but I also think that on like a 3-month time horizon, it's very unlikely that you saw such degradation before a potential coordination point. But in the extreme, you definitely could.
Cool, let's take it to the thing.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Are there any other comments or questions regarding this? And one more question on how you're validating that state. Is it just a, hey, Infura, give me the weak subjectivity state, or is there like a checkpoint cut into Tekku releases that provides baseline validation and can be overridden? Or what's the security model on that?
Yeah, I think when we have all agreed what a suitable distribution method for checkpoint states looks like, then I think we'll incorporate some safety net there. But currently, it's just simple trust. We just take whatever's given. So that's not, I think, the long-term sustainable model. But we don't yet have, I think, the understanding of what that network of getting a trusted checkpoint looks like. So yeah, that's TBD.
Sorry, how do you currently make sure or authenticate that the state is actually coming from Infura?
It's so you provide your Infura URL, so presumably it could be hijacked in some way, but it's, you know, secured by the normal means.
Right, it's a personal endpoint rather than
Right.
Okay, so you're just relying on the SSL.
Yeah.
Are you hard coding the SSL certificate of Infura on the client side?
So the client provides their URL for their Infura account, so they could.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's in production right now?
That is in the release coming tomorrow.
Right.
I mean, you probably could verify the state root after, right? Just to verify the state is correct.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just a simplification. At the moment, you can download a .ssz file from another client and load it in as a file. So this, you know, cuts out the download step and just makes it super convenient.
Okay. This is an issue we all need to solve and has like a lot of subtle little trade-offs. So let's keep talking about it. Okay. Moving on. Anything else on Altair specifically? Great. On Altair optimizations, is there any gotchas people run into or anything they want to share, any questions they have? I know Proto has also been thinking about the Altair optimizations when he implemented in Serenity. Some of them are subtly different than prior optimizations.
So one comment here. There are two optimizations I was thinking of. One is with the tree of the participation records. So currently, it does this random kind of access to this tree. And this means even though we reduce the size of the tree with previous type changes, it is still rather a lot of hashing. So if any client has tried to optimize this yet, please share. I'll try and explain. The attestations that come in have random committees. And so whenever the attestation is processed, it does random access throughout the whole tree. And it does this for a number of attestations for each block and basically replaces the complete tree. There's not much you can really cache there. So that's one point we could try and optimize. And then another thing, the obvious one is the sync committee computation. We have been pre-computing the committees and the proposers in phase 0. So it's only logical to do the same kind of thing for the sync committee. But note here that the computation differs and that we are computing a committee ahead of time for the future period. And this is a different time frame outside of the epoch processing compared to the proposer computation and the committee computation.
Thanks, Proto. Any follow-up or questions for Proto on that? Great. Let's move on to research updates. There's a lot going on. Merge is in active R&D. There's the merge call that happens every 2 weeks. So a lot of what is happening there was covered on that call. We can answer questions here if you have any. Proto still is managing, I think, 3 office hour calls every week for Rayanism, and a lot of progress there. But beyond those 2, are there any particular research updates, R&D updates that people would like to share?
Well, one thing about the calls, tomorrow will be a little bit different. We'll have this ETH Global merge summit. So no Rayanism office hour call likely, or we will move it because it collides with it conflicts with the presentations. And you're all welcome to watch the presentation, of course.
Great. Any other research items people would like to share? Okay. There's general spec discussion. We've kind of had a little bit of that throughout. Just another, I think we said this last time, but if you do want to take a look at the latest sharding designs, Proto did a bunch of work to modularize those, and they contain the current latest and greatest on those designs. So if you want to digest that. Other than that, like I said, we've chatted about the specs a decent amount throughout. Anything that people want to discuss now?
We're looking at potentially reviving Beacon Fuzz and having another crack at fuzzing your state transitions in preparation for Altair. So yeah, I might hit you guys up within the next few days, weeks, to try to identify those new state transition functions, and perhaps also have a crack at your weak subjectivity sync for those of us, or those of you who have it ready or about to be pushed through production.
Thanks, Matty.
We're looking at potentially reviving Beacon Fuzz and having another crack at fuzzing your.
Okay, that was weird.
That was very weird.
Great. All right, moving on. Anything else anybody wants to discuss today? Great. There's a lot of moving parts. The merge calls, I think, have been very productive, especially on the ETH1 side. There is an extra all-core devs call tomorrow. If you want to attend, just let me know. And then next week, again, will be all-core devs and the merge call. I believe Monday or Tuesday, we will have a very short-lived Rayanism merge testnet launch, and then maybe the following week or later that week, do something a little bit more long-standing. Good work, everyone, on that. It's pretty exciting to see it come together. And that's it. Thank you. Talk to you all soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.